Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Eartha Kitt not only looks incendiary, but she can make a song burst into flame. She was an international star who gave new meaning to the word versatile. She blazed the trail for countless black singers and actresses, but her rise to the top came at a horrific price, as Kitt's journey to stardom included brushes with violence, poverty, and even surveillance by the CIA. Why was Eartha Kitt tortured by her own identity? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Eartha Kitt, the most exciting woman on earth. Singer and actress with a difficult reputation. Kitt became a singer and dancer whose suggestive and sensuous performances captured the public imagination in the 1950s. Eartha Kitt's 5 decades in show business approximate a roller coaster ride with peaks and valleys more considerable than most. The cabaret singer with the saucy delivery and the sultry purr escaped a childhood so daunting that, according to People's Magazine John Stark, it made Charles Dickens's fictitious urchin Oliver Twist look good. Yet by the time the song stylist had reached her mid-20s, she was headlining at top clubs in the United States and Europe and rubbing elbows with such 20th century heavyweights as physicist Albert Einstein and Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Her lithe feline movements, the bewitchingly provocative glances from her wide-set eyes, and her unique vocal style, girlishly husky with an effective use of vibrato, were truly incomparable. She was born out of wedlock in 1927 to a white father and a mother who was African American and Cherokee in a small town called North in South Carolina, where miscegenation was deplored. Her parents worked on a cotton farm and named her Eartha because the harvest was good that year. Kitt's mother, Emmy Mae Keith, abandoned her daughter at an early age when she found a new man with little time for the light-skinned Eartha. Abandoned by her father as well, she was later placed with foster parents by her mother, who wanted to get married. Far from finding sanctuary, fell victim to her abusive relative, and from a young age was obliged to earn her keep by picking cotton. But the horror did not end there, because she witnessed the death of her mother when she was around 7 years old. She was convinced her mother was poisoned. She remembered being brought to her mother who was dying, and a baby passed over her mother's body. Her interpretation was that this was because the death was not natural, it was voodoo, it was spiritual. At the age of 8, she went to live with an aunt in Harlem, started to attend school, sang in the church choir, and acted in school plays. When she failed to fulfill her aunt's ambitions that she should become a concert pianist, she hated practicing, her aunt threw her out, and she worked as a seamstress in a factory and on a farm. When people come backstage and announce themselves as relatives of mine, they get the brush-off treatment. I'll never forget how my own people treated me and my mother. I had reddish hair and I was too light. Everyone called me that yellow girl, and nobody wanted me, black or white. In 1927, to be a light-skinned black person in the South was just as horrible as being a black person in the white South. My mother was not accepted by the black community. She never found out her father's name, but always assumed he was white. She was horribly abused in the South. She was beaten, mistreated, emotionally and physically. Much of Kitt's background remained shrouded in mystery. Eartha Kitt's life was scarred by her failure to learn the identity of her white father. She died without knowing the identity of her father after being denied the truth by officials in the American Deep South. The world-famous singer came from a dirt-poor background and only found out her date of birth when she was 71. When Eartha launched a legal fight to gain access to the birth certificate, she fell victim to a cover-up by officials. They were protecting the white man because they would not have gone to that trouble to protect a black man. When she set eyes on the certificate in 1998, only to find that her father's name had been blacked out. Kitt's father was Daniel Sturkey, a local white doctor. Soon after her mother's death, Kitt was sent to live with another relative in New York, where she would later win a place with America's first black modern dance company, run by Katherine Dunham. During the company's tour to Paris and London, Kitt broke away to make a solo career, and Britain would become a second home for Kitt. To find out her true origins explains her tortured relationship with the South and her own identity. She never really felt comfortable in her own skin because she never really knew who she was until then. She did not even know how old she was. She had always put 26th of January 1926 on her passport, but actually she was born on 17th of January 1927. In 1950, Kitt developed a solo act at the Paris nightclub Carol's, a lesbian haunt run by a former lover of Marlene Dietrich. Her name was Fred, one of the most beautiful women you ever want to see in your life, always dressed as a man. Kitt was such a hit, she stayed there for 11 months. She was seen by Orson Welles, who gave her the role of Helen of Troy in his production of Dr. Faust, retitled Time Runs. Orson Welles went further, calling her the most exciting woman on earth. He had backed up his opinion by featuring her in a play he produced in the French capital, and is alleged to have had a torrid affair with her some years later. It is easy to understand the impact Kitt had, for there had never been a performer quite like her. Kitt's 1950 dramatic debut in Welles's production drew critical acclaim and established her as a serious actress. She starred in 2 French films before returning to New York in 1952. After a fitful start, the performer re-established her nightclub act there. After rehearsing all night, Orson would walk me up the Champs-Élysées to my hotel with the sun coming up. We would look at the sights, window shop, and he would recite Shakespeare to me. Kitt, who had had an affair with the millionaire playboy Porfirio Rubirosa, who called her Fire and Ice, recalled the famous lunches Welles would buy her. Orson really introduced me to a marvellous gourmet type of living. Him and Rubirosa, I tell you, I was absolutely spoiled by the best kind of men. She rose to new heights in popularity. She broke attendance records at New York's Blue Angel nightclub and the Macambo in Hollywood. By the mid-50s she was recording her international repertoire. At one point she was earning $3,000 a week, but that figure jumped to $10,000 after a scandal in the papers. While Kitt prevailed as a variety artist, it was apparent by the 1960s that she was not destined for superstardom. The performer suspected that her colour and cosmopolitan persona limited her. Kitt was always considered too high class to play black women in dramas about the black experience. I didn't fit in. She thinks she's white. She doesn't sing blues. She doesn't sing jazz. I was ostracised by black people for 25 years because they were conditioned by the media into thinking that all black people should be singing the same kind of music. Kitt determined that she was also too black to be accepted into white upper-crust society. Regardless, the performer had a comfortable club following, as well as a number of social and charitable interests that consumed much of her time. In the late 1960s, Kitt played one of her most famous parts, the villainous vixen Catwoman. She took over the role on the TV series Batman from Julie Newmar. Remarkably, Kitt only played Catwoman on a handful of episodes of the short-lived campy crime show, starring Adam West and Burt Ward, but she made the role her own with her lithe, cat-like frame and her distinctive voice. The series found a second life in reruns, and it remains on the air today. She made the role of Catwoman her own when she became the first black woman to achieve mainstream TV success in America with Batman, even breaking racial taboos by flirting on screen with Adam West in the lead role. Known for being blunt and short-tempered at times, Kitt found herself in a media firestorm in 1968. Eartha Kitt's Vietnam comments nearly ended her career. In 1967, Eartha Kitt was arguably at the height of her fame, but a luncheon at the White House in 1968 nearly left her hard-won career in shambles. Kitt became a leading light in the civil rights movement in the 1960s, but when she condemned the Vietnam War on a visit to the White House, her career in the US ended, and the CIA branded her a sadistic nymphomaniac. Always outspoken, Kitt was able to channel her celebrity into activism. In May 1967 she testified before Congress, along with Washington, D.C. youth group Rebels with a Cause, on behalf of President Lyndon B. Johnson's juvenile delinquency bill. Lady Bird Johnson subsequently invited Kitt to her Woman Doers luncheon on January 18, 1968, for a discussion of what women could do to help eradicate crime on the streets. Towards the end of the luncheon, Lady Bird asked the room of 50 women, from groups such as the Association of Coloured Women's Club and the League of Women Voters, including a few governors' wives, for their comments. Kitt raised her hand and told the First Lady of the United States exactly what she thought. Juvenile crime was in part a pushback against being drafted to serve in the Vietnam War. "Boys I know across the nation feel it doesn't pay to be a good guy," Kitt said. "They figure with a record they don't have to go off to Vietnam. You send the best of this country off to be shot and maimed. They rebel in the street. They will take pot and they will get high. They don't want to go to school because they're going to be snatched off from their mothers to be shot in Vietnam." Kitt continued, "Mrs. Johnson, you are a mother too, although you have had daughters and not sons. I am a mother, and I know the feeling of having a baby come out of my guts. I have a baby and then you send him off to war. No wonder the kids rebel and take pot. And, Mrs. Johnson, in case you don't understand the lingo, that's marijuana." Her comments stunned the First Lady. Some media reports erroneously stated that Lady Bird burst into tears. Women in the room ran to the microphone to defend the Johnsons and level outrage at Kitt. The cultural and political backlash was swift. The Washington Post reported at the time that President Johnson had Kitt blacklisted. Kitt alleged that the White House, which had sent a car for her, didn't arrange a car for her departure, and she had to catch a cab. Unable to get jobs in the United States, she was forced to perform in Europe until she returned to America in 1978 to headline the Broadway musical Timbuktu. It was later unveiled by the New York Times that the CIA, prompted by the Secret Service in 1968, had kept a dossier on her. It was really heartbreaking to her and very upsetting that her own government turned on her for something as simple as just giving an honest response to a question. Even Lady Bird in her private diary wrote, "One paper said that I was pale and that my voice trembled slightly as I replied to Miss Kitt. I think that is correct. I did not have tears in my eyes, as another paper said." But lost in the kerfuffle of whether or not Kitt disrespected Lady Bird was the context of Kitt's comments about poverty, crime and the war. The public missed an opportunity to hear the critique that she was levelling and weigh it. Many believes that part of the reasons Kitt's comments were lost in the public discourse was because she was a black woman. Women celebrities like Lena Horne, Nina Simone, Mahalia Jackson and Josephine Baker were engaging in public activism during this era, similar to the activism of Harry Belafonte, Ali or John Carlos and Tommy Smith, but they didn't fit the mould of what an activist looked like, and so often these stories didn't get told. Eartha Kitt's story didn't get told by journalists as a form of activism. By then Kitt had divorced the father of her daughter, Bill McDonald, who was a white businessman and wounded Korean War veteran addicted to painkillers, and mother and daughter moved to London to relaunch her career in Europe. Her career rebounded after her return in 1978, which was accompanied by an invitation to return to the White House that year by President Jimmy Carter. By the time of her death from colon cancer in 2008, she had earned 2 Tony nominations, a Grammy nomination, won 3 Daytime Emmys, and had transformed from kitten to full-blown cougar goddess. In 2008, Kitt died on Christmas Day at her US home. Now her daughter has set up a business called Simply Eartha in her mother's memory, as well as managing her estate. She said, "She carried the scar of her rejection with her all her life. She was rejected for the colour of her skin, ironically by both black and white. To some extent I think my arrival completed her because it gave her a family that she never had." And 50 years after her career nearly derailed, black celebrity activism remains just as controversial and influential. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Eartha Kitt? It seems fair and even accurate to point out that a lot of people in the current and previous generations would have to be prompted to look up to an individual such as Eartha Kitt, since she doesn't always factor into their thinking in this day and age.